We're live.
This is the Senate Education Committee on the afternoon of May 5th. And today we have council with us and for the purpose of engaging the ARPA so that we could get this bill out of here. So
Matthew James, Office of Legislative Counsel.
John Gray, Office of Legislative Counsel.
So we have draft 3.1 of your strike all amendment to H 955 as passed by the House. I've kept, so this is a new draft from yesterday. I've kept the highlighting key at the top there the same. So yellow language means it's language that you've changed from the House version, but you've already looked at it in committee. And blue language is a change from the House version that you have not looked at it. So it's a change from the last draft. Two things though that are not highlighted. I've gone and made the changes to the Seesaws membership and to the section 14 school district guidance sections based on the maps that you had on your website. The Seesaw membership change between the Senate map and what the House passed was very small, and I was able to highlight that to show a meaningful difference. It was really difficult to show a difference in just using the words between the membership of the groupings in the House version versus the Senate version. So there's no highlighting in that section, but it is different. I've highlighted the section number. I would suggest that the best visual way to compare those differences is to look at the maps. Okay, so I come to you yet again unprepared. First change from yesterday, we're gonna go to section 2, page 3. Just to orient you, that's the Seesaw membership statute. And then the membership list starts on page 4, line 1, or I'm sorry, line 14 with subdivision 1.
and if I could just check here, what happened with these maps is that took the maps we've been working on all year. All the testimony we've received and largely and made those areas the sort of preferred merger zones or the discussion zones. And then we took from the House what they did with Chittenden County and the surrounding and sort of melded the two together. So you'll recognize everything that we have been working on, and just what was the gray area we just took from what the House did for the sort of preferred merger zones. And then made minor adjustments to the Seesaw boundaries to fit that reality. So cut them as close as possible to the House version of the Seesaws.
Yes, you can see on page 5 that Grand Isle Supervisory Union is now a member of the Champlain Valley North Seesaw. And I believe they were previously in the House version, a member of the Chittenden Central Seesaw. And Milton Supervisory District in the House version was a member of the Champlain Valley North Seesaw and is now a member of the Chittenden Central Seesaw. The membership of the Champlain Valley South Seesaw remains as the House passed it. The membership of the Southwest Seesaw remains the same as the House passed it. I'm on page 7 now, line 7. The Vermont Learning Collaborative remains the same as the House passed it, and that also means that it is the same as its current membership. And then the very bottom of page 8, the Northeast Seesaw, we've added Central Vermont Supervisory Union to the Northeast Seesaw. It used to be a member of the Winooski Valley Seesaw. And then the Winooski Valley Seesaw is just missing the Central Vermont Supervisory Union, but the rest of its membership remains the same as passed by the House.
Yes, this question for you, Chair. How did you come to these determinations on the Seesaws? What was the driving factors to say here right now is
It's the map underneath forms the Seesaws.
Yes.
So that's how. And I left this to every extent possible to follow the House version of the seesaws. Just made minor boundary adjustments to fit the map that we know we're all set. That's why I think council said that seesaw boundaries have changed very little.
Okay, but that was concept that you came up with help from,
No, I just really took this, left it as close as possible to what the House did. So the House seesaw boundaries work.
I have a question. It's in a similar vein to what Senator Hatman was referring to. I'm trying to keep up with what the changes are between the House CISA map and the Senate CISA map. And there are changes, right? You were just going over those.
Yeah, I did not draw those maps.
So I guess I'm curious, where did the boundaries that we have now in front of us for the CISAs change from the House version, or rather, why did those boundaries change from the House version? And yeah,
The House had different, the map that's key is the map showing the preferred. That's the key map here.
the preferred districts.
Yeah, because that's, the House's version was different. And I employed the map that we've been working on the whole session. And made those areas the preferred attendance zones because we took testimony about those the whole session. And so then I just adjusted the seesaw boundaries to fit over this.
Okay.
That's fine.
So the next change from the draft we looked at yesterday is on page 14. To section 604, which is the powers of seesaws. And this change is on line 17, and it's a rudimentary attempt at getting at the discussion you had yesterday over whether requiring a seesaw to offer services means they need to have those contracts in place, or whether they need to wait until someone says, hey, I need this, and then they can't say no. And so absent further direction from you, all I've done is added on line 17, when requested. So at a minimum, a CISA shall offer services in the following areas to its members when requested.
I think that reflects the.
Sorry, which, oh,
Page 14. I think it totally depends on what your goals are here. Try to keep it simple. And then I made the same change to page 22 to section 2A, which is a new section that you've added that just takes those recommended services on lines 12 and 13 and makes them required services, and then adds facilities master planning. And I believe July 1, 2027. And so I've added the same when requested on line 17 there to conform with the change we made previously, because section 2A is actually taking what will then be current law and amending it. So we needed to keep that when requested.
So
Question back on page 15, duties of seesaw or powers of seesaw. Yesterday, we had a conversation and folks remember the acronym PD, the professional development, used to be on the list, not on the list now, or is this a different list of functions?
When you say used to be on the list, when do you mean used to?
Well, yesterday,
page 20, I think if you go to page 23.
23. Oh, there.
Senator Weeks, so you're on page 23.
I was referring to page,
On page
I was referring to page 14 and 15. So powers of seesaws compared to whatever the list is on 23.
So on page 14, you're making changes to the powers and duties of seesaws that would be effective July 1, 2026. And you can see on lines 12 and 13 on page 14 that there are some recommended services that includes professional
Oh, there
development.
you go. Okay, different format.
Yep.
Gotcha. Tracking. Thank you.
And then the next change, and I do apologize, I thought I took the highlighting out and I guess I didn't. The next change comes in section 14. And that's to the groupings that the facilitator is required to use as guidance on page 38 when forming the study committees. And I've unfortunately left the blue highlighting in, which is great for our editors, but horrible for you. I think the best way to visualize the change between the House version and the Senate version is to really look at the map. There was almost no meaningful way to use language to show the difference based on the differences between the groupings. There are definitely some similarities. But for example, group 1 in the House starts in a different part of the state than group 1 in the Senate. And they, anyway, I just think the best way to visualize the difference is to look at the maps. But if you're not interested in what the House did, if you're only interested in what the Senate is passing, then the words starting on page 39 are the groups inclusive of the school districts that would be included in those groups.
So I have a question about the facilitators and the report back to the lead facilitator, because I've been thinking about this district map, the guidance that we have, and the fact that the facilitator can diverge from what is included in this guidance. And in order to do so, the facilitator only has to say why to the lead facilitator. Can the lead facilitator veto that, for lack of a better word, or override it in any way?
There's nothing in this bill that would give them that power.
Thank you.
How do you want me to just leave it there, that the school district groupings as they are what they are, or do you want to, how would you like to? Okay.
The map.
So while we're on page 36, 37, 38, is that correct? Before we get to the groupings, I'm trying to figure out with the committee where we're going by Friday. And this is a section in section 4 on page 36 where it says, at the end of all of this, whenever, like, I know people have questioned the timeline, but at the end of all of this, they just submit a report. That is different in my mind from Act 46, which, you know, at some point, you got an incentive if you merged, you got, you know, there, like, I just want to say this is maybe the heart of the issue of like, this is all voluntary and ends in reports. And I think if we're to look at, so the foundation formula going into effect is the cost, consistency, and containment measure. But if we're like the equity concerns and the like consistency concerns, there's other concerns that come in. Just getting a bunch of school districts to a table and then not doing anything to keep them at the table. I remember specifically hearings in room 11 where brave school board members and others just came and said, if there's nothing to keep us at the table, we're not staying at the table.
This is the House language.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it's Wednesday.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep reminding us,
Well,
the day of the week.
no. If, so the House did not have anything to compel workers. And they set up a structure to facilitate or back about why workers did or didn't happen. That's what the House did.
I don't want anyone to think I know anything they don't.
Yep.
People should really pay attention to this because this is where it all becomes voluntary.
But
And not even as prescriptive as Act 46 for whatever we're trying to achieve. That's it. Those are the only changes I've made since yesterday.
Well, why don't we, start with section one and start doing markup?
Is AOE way back?
Now they're gonna be here at 3:30 because they want to comment on the, school construction.
Okay.
We've got a lot of ground to cover. How do you want to approach markup?
Well, let's just, so section one is legislative intent. It's the House language, except for adding a reference to goal being excellent education.
Chair, can I ask it first of, if you take a straw poll, who wants to go with CISAs and who doesn't? Because that's gonna make a big difference on this bill.
Yeah, we could, do that. So, well, that's really, you're really talking about the House construct.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So, which one of us favor going with the House construct versus what,
Maybe Terry raised his hand first.
Say that again? That's the second time I heard my name mentioned here.
didn't raise your hand?
No, sorry, I was saying, I think that could be a whole discussion. I don't know if we're just raising our hands, because I guess my question is, I have no problem with CISAs. I personally, you know, we heard from the people who manage the finances of districts and supervisory units that they see limited, promising but limited opportunities for savings and efficiencies. So I think what's more valuable for everyone to talk about is, what do we hope we get out of the question of consolidation? I hope we get regional excellent high schools. And I don't think CISAs move us in that direction.
So what does that mean for the bill?
That's, I think everyone needs, like, we're at a soul searching time, I would say.
We got like a day to do some soul searching.
Yes.
I'll just say it depends, because generally speaking, yeah, I like CISAs, but it's also possible we could end up adding or removing a whole bunch of things that make this construct unfeasible and irrational. And so my answer is it depends, but I would like to move forward with what we have in front of us and tease out the details, because we're not going to start from scratch today.
I'm looking for a less complex system, and I don't believe this achieves its doing CISAs. I think it's just adding more on top of already what is large and not having the ability to control spending for whatever reason. I believe that schools already should have been doing this, in the state making it easier for them to do it, rather than starting a whole nother program of CISAs to do it. We had Mr. Livingston in here yesterday that their SU alone saved $750,000, quote unquote, is what he said. And it's like, all we need is better communication between our SUs, SDs to start sharing services and giving them the ability to do that, rather than having to go to a service to do it. That's just one man's opinion.
Sorry, yes.
Okay, Senator Williams.
So I'm coming from behind here because I wasn't privy to what was said yesterday, but I think we're talking semantics here, whatever you want to call it. CISAs, RISAs, whatever you want to call it. I've been saying ever since the first day that we need to rename the structure that we're going to have. I agree with Senator Hashim. Doesn't matter to me what we call it, it's how we structure it.
Sure, I'll chime in. So seesaws already exist. They're BOSUs. We created them 3 years ago. At the time, we had a lot of conversation about their utility. I think we all supported their utility and their potential cost savings. My perspective 3 years ago is not really unchanged from now. I advocated what I termed as super unions, which was simply larger districts with the concept of the seesaw embedded within the larger regional footprint. That's where I was 3 years ago. That's where I am today. I still think that we need that the core of this transformation is, in the end, for me, a superintendent that has a much larger geographic footprint to find efficiencies in the business aspect, efficiencies for the benefit of students, for academic programs, looks at facilities, looks at regional high schools, looks at CTEs. So I'm not an advocate of a standalone seesaw. I am an advocate, again, what I used to call the super union, which is a bigger SU, bigger district that has a regional perspective, so we can start making decisions on, again, academic programs, facilities, CTEs, etc.
Can I ask an audience question?
But
I mean, not the whole audience, but I did see that Ben is here from Campaign for Vermont. What's been frustrating, I would say, the last few weeks is I think Ben's the only person who's brought us in hard data. And people, I don't know if anyone's questioned your methodology or challenged your graphs that you've shared. And I would be interested in that, but no one else, frankly, is presenting us data on what saves money. Am I wrong? Like, has someone presented?
Year and a half ago,
Yeah.
AE came in, their cost data.
I think that was debunked, frankly.
when we back up from this.
Yeah.
Do know what the foundation formula does. The foundation formula sets a starting point, that's it. So we
Right.
know the foundation formula saves money. So save dollars, that's the cost of it. The foundation formula is huge.
Sure.
The question is, how do we establish the framework upon which the foundation formula will work?
And we had your Yale student, right, from the Kingdom, and Ben are the only people who come in and said, I think she said either a district or a supervisory union can save money so you can put it into the thing you need to, when you have a bigger area. And Ben's work showed cost savings. Has anybody else wanted to present us data about what kind of governance model saves money? Like, we haven't gotten that. I mean, because we've had different superintendents say, we did this kicking and screaming and it saved money. We did this and it didn't save money, you know, but this, I don't know why I think we only have a few pieces of information where they gave us the methodology and gave us a full statewide look at what saves money.
Senator Sheet.
Thanks. Senator Ron Hensdale was brought up a point that I was also thinking of. And at least in some of the data that we got, it's the larger supervisory unions that tend to save money as opposed to the larger district sizes. That's what I was taking from the data. And so I guess to Senator Weeks's point, do we revisit the concept and figure out where we're going to land on the idea of not creating the 2-year voluntary merger concept for districts and then going into the forced consolidation, but rather the voluntary merger process for SUs and then doing something that is a consolidation down the road? Is that a feasible possibility for us to figure out the next 2 days?
I don't know. We were up to version 9.2 of the bill that we had been working on, which actually set out SUs that had the so-called gray area and took a lot of testimony, and that's what's reflected in this map at this point, all testimony. So I think that just to give it its due, and what the House is trying to do is through the seesaws, get areas of the state to think regionally, to think bigger. And then use that as the way to get to mergers and then down to fewer superintendents, I suppose, fewer SUs. They came at it that way. But I think the notion of the seesaws, especially with the facilitators, is to get areas to think bigger. And that's what this map, both of these do. I think these get areas to think bigger and think about mergers. So we had had testimony from superintendents saying districts and superintendents are ready to think bigger, ready to think about mergers, because especially in the face of the foundation formula coming down and recognizing that it will work better with larger areas. So I don't know, with this version was really just trying to take some of the work that we had done and build it with what the House did in order to get us to the point that we can have a bill ready with a reasonable chance of passing both bodies.
I would say there's,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Also, in reflecting all the testimony we've heard from rural Vermont, and about the resistance to forced mergers and wanting to make sure that there's giving voices, trying to take all of that and build it into something that.
so the reason I explained it as on page 36 and 37 is because in my policy playbook, the only thing in between voluntary and mandated is incentivized. And that's largely where we landed with Act 46 is you are incentivized to do these things. And your community knows you're incentivized. So they know that, if they're taking a vote, they are more informed, or we're offering carrots at some level or sticks. And this notion of just writing a report at the end, I think that's where I'd land my questioning, to do something in between voluntary and required.
The incentive now should be that all Vermont knows is that we need to make our school system more efficient, and that if we start consolidating because we can do the study and know what's right, that should be the incentive, that it's going to save all of us taxpayers money. I know Act 46 that they gave specific for if you did it, but the state now is in a position that we kind of have to do it that we all going to save in the long run.
But what Superintendent Harity said to us is that you can incentivize the wrong things. And you can have holes geographically in your district. You can create something really messy.
So let me ask you this. What if the board thought of, rather than if we designed regions and set the region up and said, okay, you have a year in these regions to come back to show us how we're gonna either consolidate your schools or make better judgment in these regions, because nobody's drawing lines at that point. It's giving an open option for everybody to get on the table and talk. You don't change a thing for a year, but everybody knows the foundation formula is coming. And is that a better option than saying, hey, we're gonna put down something in legislation that you have to do, or here, we're gonna draw the state up into regions. You need to figure this out. You got 1 year to come back to the legislators to say, here's the concept. here's the concept. Here's how we can give you the data that it's gonna work, or we can give you the data that doesn't work. But the upside is it takes the strain off us legislators of making a bad decision. And it puts it on people out in the field that are doing the work, who we always say are the most important and should be listened to. And then that will be our driver to decide what we do. Because like you said, we're in the 11th hour and we are all so far apart on our, what we want. It's not gonna happen. But if we could draw up something that we put regions and say, there you go, come back. You prove to us how you're gonna make it work. Or we're gonna make the decision and then everybody's gonna be on it.
I might be conflating two different things here, but it's my understanding that the CISA is that region that you're describing, and the facilitators coming back with
But
some
I
ideas.
agree kind of that they're CISAs, but no, you're talking that all the SUs and SDs that they're just talking. Here we're designing we're drawing lines on the map that are, you're in this region.
No, well, actually, just to be clear about that, these are just discussion zones.
Yes,
They're not,
yes, but
they're not mixed lines on maps by any.
I believe we should draw discussion zones and say, rather than us figuring it out, and if you need to tweak that line a little bit, show us come next year. But other than that, because at the end of the day, us legislators make this decision that the rest of Vermont's gonna have to live with. And I've sat here for 2 years listening to our principals, our superintendents, our students, our teachers. Don't rush it. And every time we come down to something like this, everybody still believes we're rushing. And it's like, no, we're not rushing it, but we do have to make a decision. I want to make the right one.
I'm not trying to be dense here, but if we have the facilitators coming back saying, here are some ideas for mergers within the CISA region, how is that different than what you're describing?
Because it's not a CISA. It is, they're eventually, that region is going to decide how they're going to condense down. And maybe we turn that whole region into an SU. Maybe we turn it into an SD because they've discussed it and know what is coming. And if they can show efficiencies staying in the districts that they are, and that we're going to become more efficient and cost us, our taxpayers, less, we don't touch it. We don't have to touch it. Lincoln Elementary, it became their own district, and they're making it work because they want to keep their local control. You put them all together and say, you have to make it work, or we are going to do what the state AOE recommends, or we are going to do whatever the House or the Senate come up with. But this gives them the ability to, like Terry was saying, let's get them all in one room and let them fight it out. Well, they don't want to do that. But if we design 6, 7 regions, whatever we decide, I think we should keep it a minimal number and have them work within that and come back and tell us how they're going to make efficiencies rather than us telling them how they're going to make efficiencies. I think it's going to work a lot better for Vermont.
So no CISAs, but have 7 areas where the
Regions that they're going to work together to tell us how they're going to make more efficiencies in their regions. Total hands off.
Maybe, on one level, it doesn't sound like we're that far apart. But what this does is with the zone and the 7 facilitators are just working within these areas, trying to figure out groups and then get them at the table together and help them figure out whether it makes sense to merge. Nobody's required to do anything. Like Lincoln isn't required one way or the other.
Right. But they have to show us efficiencies or.
Well, I think when mergers happen, it only happens after they're the ones, but when they're looking at a merger, they do the financial analysis to really figure out whether the merger makes sense.
And that's where we assist with, there's where the Vermont money.
Chair Bongartz, can I say something?
Yeah, sure, yes.
So we already have the law Act 73 is already passed. What we don't have is we don't have boundaries. And we do have a proposed boundary, but who, you keep talking about they, who are they gonna be?
But the districts talking with each other and
Yeah, I
deciding.
know that, but what districts? Who's gonna be the head of it?
Uh,
I mean, I think that's what we need to decide right
Yeah.
now, is the structure.
So there will be a facilitator that would operate within each of these seesaw regions as they're laid out here, right?
Yep.
And all they would do is pull districts together, get them to the table. The only thing they're required to do is come to the table. And have a discussion. They can either say, this grouping makes sense, this grouping doesn't make sense. We want to be over here. There's a lot of flexibility in it. And the way that the House construct is just to get people at the table and try to get them talking and recognizing the reality of Act 73 coming in the foundation formula to decide on their own whether it makes sense for them to merge or not.
Which people?
But
We've already got, we're talking 52 superintendents out there that are still in charge.
we're talking about the districts and the boards and ultimately the voters will decide
That's,
in that region whether they want to merge.
So somebody tell me if I'm oversimplifying this, but are we talking about keeping the districts that we have, keeping the SUs that we have, getting rid of the CISA concept guidance, but having these discussion regions and creating a group of facilitators that will come back to us with statistics and data about merging?
Actually, it would be, just to fill in the blanks here a little bit, it would be that, but they would either decide they're ready to merge. We get that report saying they're on their way to merger. You know, this area here is on its way to merger. That's the report. Or this area here isn't interested in merger and a couple of weeks want to go over this. It's kind of, it may, and the hope is that the report back is that all these areas, a lot of these areas are on their way to merger because they've decided, haven't been brought together, that it makes sense to do so.
A lot have been talking because of what's been going on here in the State House.
Yep.
And now if we give you one more year to figure it out and come back to us, or then us as legislators, whoever's here at the time, can say, you've had your chance. Now we're just gonna do whatever statistically work, what the AOE, Senator Haynes, you were saying wasn't proven or debunked, you believe. But if you have something, this is what we're going with, this is what you're gonna live.
What prevents the status quo?
I think, well, I guess you technically or theoretically nothing. Except you would have the seesaws on it. But I think that the idea is that with the foundation formula coming down the tracks, because that's going to be still passing, that the foundation formula is coming. But one of the things that the facilitator would talk about is that reality and the reasons that it makes sense to group themselves into larger districts.
And this will be coming from the bottom up.
And we heard, we have heard testimony from a number of superintendents to the effect that they're ready for those discussions, districts are ready for those discussions. So you're right, we're not forcing that, we are not forcing. But we also heard a lot of resistance to that from all over the lot as we took testimony and listened. So that's the question for us. I have come to think that trying to force it is not the normal. And that what we should try to do is pull people together and get them to think bigger.
And I agree with you, Chair, and that's why I don't believe we should put anything in legislative except that you got 1 year. And here's, we'll never decide on a map. I've seen that. That's why one unified system would be the best, by the way. But it gives them 1 year, just 1 year
Or sooner.
to talk and come back and say, here's where the efficiency would come. Here's what we're planning on doing to save the state from making the decision and our local controls make a decision. We should have done this last year, you know, it just came to me after sitting here discuss everything that everybody's saying, we don't want it from the top down, we want it from the bottom up. Give the bottom up a year to, oh, that's not long enough. Well, we've been messing around with this for 2 years and got nowhere, so you have a year. And everybody knows it. Principals have been in, superintendents have been in, you know, teachers have been in, everybody's been. So let them, they don't like any of our ideas. Some do. The CISA's 50-50 from what I saw.
And to be fair to the superintendents, they said, give us the parameters. Like, I don't know that they got as far as draw the lines or not, but they said, give us districts of 2,000 to 4,000, give us that mandate. We are still all disagreeing on districts and unions and things like that. We're disagreeing maybe on if that number is too harsh geographically.
There, if we cut the state into regions to sell them, it's like you can have as many, as long as you show us the efficiencies. Show that when we put the foundation and formula in effect, that you're not gonna have such big losers that they can't stay open.
Right. I will just say, in my mind, and I've done this in my district to try and work backwards from what vision are we trying to work towards? I think eventually we're gonna need to have governance units where we're able to say, you have one regional high school and one alternative high school of some point, of some kind. And if, like, I'm gonna throw that out there right now because I like what we do to move us in that direction. And my frustration with AOE, even around CTEs, was they agree with regional high schools, but want some decisions to be made by AOE and some to be this and everything to be districts. And I'm not as worried about how people get to one regional high school and one alternative high school construct. I just want to give them the tools to do that and incentivize that.
And then that should be what we put in for the CISAs. That should just be what we put in statute, that in these regions, this is what we want to see, and come back to us with that. And if the region thinks a CISA is great, they could pitch that.
So question maybe for you, Chair, or the rest of the committee, or actually even Ledge Council. Aside from striking the mandatory CISAs, how would this diverge from what the House sent us? The concept of just having facilitators come back and tell us what's good or what's bad,
A question for me?
if you know the answer.
Listening to aside from putting seesaws to the side, if you're just talking about school districts, I believe what Senator Heffernan described is the House version.
Oh, so if we took the name out of what the governance construct is.
I think you have to name the governance construct. What the House version does is say, here are some facilitators. Facilitators, here's some guidance for groupings. Those groups get together and follow current law to study the advisability of forming a new unified union school district. One, they study that advisability. Their final reports, which are required under current law, have been augmented by the House, and what you are keeping in your draft amendment right now on page 34 to require an analysis of the educational advantages and disadvantages of a new union school district, the financial advantages and disadvantages of the new union school district, the operational and financial viability and sustainability of the new union school district, and any other advantages or disadvantages. And then if the study committee decides that it's not advisable to form a new union school district, an analysis on why not, with references to any laws that were impediments. So if we're talking about an analysis, that I think that's already built in. And then the year timeline, the study committees are actually required to finish up their work by December 1st, 2027. And they're required to have their first meeting by December 1st, 2026. So that is exactly a year.
And we could ask for them to come midway through before we leave session to see how they're doing.
Quick clarify, I'm just trying to reconcile the difference in the dates, because I'm also seeing on page 43, on or before January 1, 2029.
Yes, so the study committees are using current law, the Union School District Formation Law, and that requires the study committee to come up with a report for their constituents. The process that plays out after that report is it has to go to the school boards of the folks making up the school districts, then the secretary, then the state board, and then the voters would ultimately be able to vote whether or not to form a union school district. That's separate than any reporting back to you all on the status of those reports. And I believe Senator Hashim, that's what you're referring to, is a report back. What page were you on?
I was looking at 43,
Yeah.
study committee results and analysis.
Yep, that's a report back to you all. The study committee reports that are required on page 30, starting on page 34, are for the Union School District formation process. So it's their analysis for whether or not to form a new union school district that then would ultimately inform the voters on whether or not to vote for the formation of the union school district. You could have those reports come to you. I think what the House did was just ask for a summary of those reports.
Yeah. Well, so you're saying that they got to go through the school boards and then the voters. I don't believe that's what I'm asking for from this group that gets together. It is foundation formula is coming next day. You don't want the state telling you how to control your districts. But here's what's coming. How are you going to show the state that in your region, it's going to be affordable? If it has to go through the voters, I guess, yes. But is that law we have to go through the voters, or getting that report up to us that study group comes back and this is all pie in the sky stuff? Hey, if this school and this school come together and this one, we make a new SU, and now we had 4 SUs in this region. Now we only have 2. That's what our study found. And here's how we create efficiencies. So when you implement the foundation formula, it will work. Now, it hasn't gone through the voters. And really, from what you said, by law, the legislators can say, here's what study groups came back and said, this is what's going to work. It came from the ground up.
I'm hearing 2 different things from you, Senator. So I'm hearing one, that you don't want the legislature to impose anything. But
1 year.
But I'm also hearing that you want the legislature to ultimately, I guess maybe I'm confused. So what the House does is exactly what you just described, as far as folks getting together in the field and deciding how to most efficiently provide an excellent education for their students, right? That is the study committee process.
In that region, correct?
In the groupings, whoever, I don't care what word we use. A study committee by definition is made up of people, right?
Right.
And those people come from physical locations. And so by definition, they are going to be representing the region of the folks in that geographic location, even if we don't use the term region. The process in current law, which the House requires the study committees to follow, is that in order to create a new school district without an act of the legislature, which I've heard you say you don't want the legislature to do, then the process would be these study committees get together, do all the work, and make a pitch to the voters.
All right, can stop you right there. They don't have to make a pitch to the voters.
Then what process would you
What
like?
they're doing is they're going to show the legislative.
Then what does the legislature do?
They take that information and say, okay, here's what's going to happen in this region.
So then they charter school districts. That's what you're saying.
All right.
So this is a policy choice you can make,
Thank you for explaining it. Yeah.
but it is a legal impossibility to say you don't want the legislature to impose school districts and you want the legislature to make the final decision and create school districts.
Well, we do in the end anyway. The towns right now will change the school districts, but
No, right now, any school district could get together and vote without any legislative interference to form a new school district or
Link it.
to break up.
I interject maybe with a clarifying question for Senator Heffernan. Are you suggesting that this year-long process happens and they come to the legislature with these reports? And if it's not up to what the next legislature wants, in terms of savings and efficiencies and so on, then we're going to, as a legislature, create our own districts?
That's a dog with no teeth, basically, because they don't know what the next legislative group will do. But what this is allowing to happen is from the bottom up rather than the top down. We're given just what it says here, but you're not waiting for it to go through the vote in that. And it comes back with the best study. And if it is, we do charter districts. I would be for that because now we have the data showing from the ground up, not from the top down, that this is what you're showing us will work for your region. Are you going to make it happen? Or is your legislative body going to make it happen?
Get what you're, I get what you're saying. It's making sense. I think as a counterpoint, I think that if we're describing it as a ground up shift, or ground up process, but we're taking the vote out of it, I think it's likely to get some strong opposition, but on the other hand,
It's coming from the local.
it's a study that doesn't have any teeth unless the next legislature says something will happen.
So we'll note that what Senator Heffernan mentioned a couple minutes ago, there is an interim report that's built into this.
I'm sorry.
There was an interim report that we built in.
Yes, you built,
So that the legislature will have a sense of whether what we're hoping happens is honestly the happening or not. So there is that interim report that the process is. The only part about this early on that's not totally ground up is the fact of the facilitator and the potential groupings saying you should start here. That's it. Otherwise, it's totally bottom up and what people do or don't want to do in their districts, what they want to look seriously in mergers. And we do get an interim report where the facilitators will say, it looks like this one's headed, we're into merger. This area is looking like it's not going to, and the legislature will have that information to decide whether the construct that we're trying to put together here is headed in the right direction or not.
Or that region comes back and shows with efficiencies they've made that they're going to be able to live on a foundation formula. They necessarily don't have to combine or consolidate. If you can prove that here, we're going to stay just the way we are, and here's how we're creating these efficiencies that we are going to, because once the foundation formula is, and we found out we can't, well, we did this, you did the study, you told us you could, now you have to make a decision. I just,
I think that's all there.
Yeah.
What you described is totally.
but I think all we really need to do is decide on what we want for regions. And I guess as
Got the guardrails. We gotta tell them what the guardrails are. I mean,
Exactly.
that's our policy. So if I hear everybody right, I say I agree, what's the next step? We gotta set the boundaries. And then we have to, if we're gonna have groups organize to make these decisions, is there something in the House version that already does that, Ms. St. James?
And I want to put in school choice option. I want to give them a gamut when they come back of what's best for that region, not just what. And even if, just like the task force went totally off course and did what they want to do and said, this is the best thing for the state.
But
That
it's
is
not what you want. It's what the committee wants.
Correct.
So we all have to come to an agreement. So how do we do that?
Well, should we look then at the list of all the factors that the facilitators have to take into consideration as it's written currently, and then figure out what we want to add or subtract?
It's in page.
I'm not sure what exactly.
Well,
34?
Chair, I put this idea out there. It seems like it has some, most may agree with that. And I guess that's the next thing. Do we want to decide and then either we use, I don't care what we use or not. The less regions, I think, the better. But that really doesn't matter to me as long as that's what we're doing and we're putting it on those regions that we give the criteria of what we're looking for. You know, the foundation formula is coming, keep that date a solid date, because that is the hammer. And
But what is the hammer, though?
the hammer is the foundation formula. If you don't get it figured out, that's all you're gonna get. And you saw how many schools would be way short on the foundation formula.
Foundation formula without the weights?
With the weights, of course you need the weights.
So how would it be a hammer if everybody is getting the foundation formula regardless?
Because there's some regions, like I know Addison County, it'd be pretty tough on us if on the foundation formula. But if we combine maybe our high school and a couple of our grade schools that are smaller, might be right where we need to be. And this gives us 1 year to figure that out. And when the taxpayers are going, you know, I don't really, because everybody here in this, nobody wants to say, hey, I want to close your school. I know I don't. I know that schools are vital to the community. However, if it's an inefficient school, then the options need to be looked at of what we can do to help not only the children, but our financial end of it, of an inefficient school.
So I go back to it, I think we're actually closer to like I think we are. Why don't we do it, instead of as she suggested, look at the criteria of the what the facilitator is, what the report would look like, but that's starting on page.
Page 32.
Before you guys do that, I just want to say I have to run to Senate Finance, so I didn't want to.
That's,
Thank you.
No, we got you. You can't go.
I have received that response before.
It's cooler in here today.
We have the key, the door.
So actually. So do we actually start on page 31?
I would say that the criteria starts on page 32, but we can start wherever you want. The section 13 itself starts on page 31, so yeah.
Yeah, let's do that.
And rather than union, do we just change 13 to whatever regional consolidation and facilitation?
I think this is where words actually do matter, and union school district is a technical term. It's legally defined. So if you do not want a school, these groups of school districts being able to form a union school district on their own, then I think you need to give me direction on what it is you are asking them to explore.
So in my eyes,
I think I need to take my direction from it. Do you want me to take direction from members or from?
well, I'm just asking, and the chair, here's what I'm thinking is when you cut it into the regions that we have it, that those regions can decide if they want SUs or SDs.
I don't think there's anything prohibiting that here, right?
No, and this bill does nothing to get rid of supervisory unions. It literally allows a school district, 10 school districts, come to the table, say, nah, I'm good, and walk out the door. And they have met the law,
We don't want that.
okay?
I want them to show the efficiencies that they're in.
You have to write a report that says it answers the questions you have asked them to, and that is why forming a new union school district would not be advisable, is the term that the law uses. So if you want that, I mean, we can look at the report language and talk about the details that are required in the analysis of the report. But I think I think we can either go line by line, or we can talk bigger concept, because I'm very confused as to what the end goal is here.
I explain again one more time.
Okay.
Okay, we pick regions. We'll just draw lines for regions. All right? In that region, then SDs and all the school districts, school unions, they meet in that region. The goal of that, they can't just say, we're good and walk away. They have to stay in the meeting and show where the efficiencies are going to be coming from in this region. You can call it a CISA if you want, but they're not going to share service.
CISAs have nothing to do.
Okay,
with
great. Great.
Let's see if we actually have that,
Okay,
what you're talking about. So let's walk through this.
all right.
Because I think what you're talking about is here.
What I don't want is just what you said, that somebody could get, school, Lincoln could come in and say, we're all set. I don't need to sit at the table and put up with this.
Status quo.
Yeah, or any of it.
I mean, no change. That's status quo.
Yeah.
That's the fundamental problem.
I think I also heard, I guess part of where my confusion is, I also heard you say that if they can show efficiencies in status quo, that would be okay. Right? If the foundation formula, quote unquote, works, and I don't know what that means. I think that's subjective. I don't think that's objective. If the foundation formula works for Lincoln, they could come to the table and say,
Why they're at the table and you're talking about efficiencies, well, what would help? And they already do this. They talk to the district on food service. They can also talk about, can I have share and maintenance service? Because it gets you together because it's coming. And if you can show that you're going to work as a community, and basically it's almost creating its own big district, but they're a community within themselves, but they have to work together. And you may say, hey, I'm fine. Well, if you're fine, then show the other school how you're fine, how you're doing it, that you're working within the budget limit. So it's keeping them in a, you can't walk away from the table. Everybody has to stay a part of it.
I think there's a degree to which they have to, because of.
I'm sorry for actually, I'm not sorry. I used a flip statement of now I'm good to try and lighten the mood. I can feel the tension in this room. Folks are required to participate, and they're required to come up with an end product, an end analysis. The House version, which you have adopted in this most recent amendment, draft 3.1, allows folks to decide for themselves whether it is advisable or inadvisable to form a new union school district. You have policy options available to you, that the analysis is not just formation of a union school district, but some other analysis on efficiencies within those groupings. You would just need to spell that out. But the broad strokes of what you are describing, Senator Heffernan, is what the House has in here. At the end of the day, the House version leaves it up to the voters on whether or not a new school district is formed, because that is how current law works. Whether you put a stop after the study and have some other process that's different from the House is a policy choice for the committee to make. But it's a methodical process to work through, and talking big picture is not helpful to me if you want a new draft for tomorrow.
I would suggest we walk through section 13. Look at what's actually in it, what it actually does. See how close it is to what we're looking for.
Can you say page and line too, when you start? Please.
Yep, so section 13 starts on page 31,
Thank you.
line 9.
Okay,
So on or before October 1st, the Vermont Learning Collaborative is required to employ or contract for the services of 7 facilitators who will be the facilitators in the various regions working with the groups. And then one lead facilitator who would be overseeing those facilitators. Are we good? Okay. Is it helpful to mark that that process is, are you trying, what's the goal here? Is it just to inform you all and walk through, or are we trying to mark it up?
I say mark it up.
I wanted to try to mark up.
Okay.
Let's try to do that.
Okay, so facilitator concept, go. Discuss amongst yourselves.
So I'm, yeah, more prescriptive than facilitator does. Prescriptive meaning set regions, supervisory districts, whatever you want to call them, the single superintendent with a mechanism to allow schools or districts to change boundaries with a process. So I'm not a facilitator for this purpose to do this.
So can I add something to that? I think a lot of what we're saying they're gonna do, a lot are already done. I'll give you an example. You know, high school X is in one town, and they have considered merging with high school Y, but their school is in really good shape. So they're proposing to high school Y, the municipality where it is, that we'll take the middle school. I mean, can we be descriptive to that degree? And allow them to come back with that? Because I don't know which schoolhouses are in the best shape. The municipalities and the districts do. Does that make sense?
Quite sure what we're not at the point of talking about schools per se. We're talking about districts at this point.
Yeah.
But it should have what he's talking about.
You're suggesting that it include an analysis of the status, the condition of the schools?
Correct. I mean, that's going to be part of their decision making, I'm sure. Seeing how there's
I
construction.
I don't think we're there yet in the walkthrough.
Okay.
When I
Okay.
said facilitators discuss amongst yourselves, I literally meant, do you want to use facilitators?
Facilitators.
Do you want to use the concept of a facilitator and technically the word facilitator? Like, can we check off lines 9 through 16? Or 9 through 18?
Say yes, other than, as I just showed the chair, being that it's just for this, cut it down to 6. But unless, is it because it's so crowded?
Population, yeah,
Okay, then, okay, keep it steady.
okay. Okay, let's keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so the House language that you have adopted here relies on the current law study committee process for union school district formation. That is a entry level decision I think you need to make before we keep going. Because I'm making assumptions when we see the word study committee about what that means and whether or not I need to draft something or not draft something.
So I'm in favor of study committees. That makes sense.
Me too.
It's a policy question for you all.
So
Can you explain that one more time, please, Bill?
So chapter 11 and title 16 is the Union School District Exploration, Formation, and Governance chapter in title 16. It gives current school districts, remember, Union School District is defined as a school district made up of 2 or more towns. And so chapter 11 governs, or is the law that governs how towns get together to form union school districts, and then also, once they are up and running, what that governance looks like over a long period of time. There is an entire subchapter in chapter 11 that lays out the process for how school districts get together voluntarily right now in the field and decide amongst themselves whether or not to form a new larger school district. It's larger by definition because it's more folks are coming to the table. More municipalities, other school districts. Section 13 relies on that process.
So if they want, that's just for doing SUs, or if they decided, hey, we're gonna do,
Supervisory unions have nothing to do with this.
okay,
It's the school district.
okay, cool, yes, great.
So, page 32.
On line 1, page 32. Each facilitator is required to group school districts together within the facilitator. I'm not going to refer to CISA. I'm just going to say facilitators assigned region
It's fine.
to form study committees to study the advisability of forming a unified union school district.
Yes.
Yes,
Is that gonna fill the intent of what it said, not do a new district if they don't have to?
There's more to.
All right, okay,
So
good
it's
with it
just
now.
like,
It's
get
just-
together.
I would say that it's to study the advisability. And this section, along with current law, gives folks the choice of yay or nay. We do want to form a new school district, or we don't want to form a new school district. So it doesn't presuppose that the only outcome is a new school district. Does that answer your concern? Okay. The facilitator, I'm on line 4, page 32. The facilitator shall consult with school district boards prior to finalizing study committee membership. So it's ultimately the facilitators who get to decide, but this language is requiring them to consult locally on the ground with their, on that membership.
do we need to give them a timeline?
The timeline's coming up.
Okay,
So I'm on line 5 now, page 32. Using the suggested school district groupings contained in section 14, which is the second map. That's the blue mess in the middle of the bill. Using those groupings, which is truly the most policy of policy choices you all can make, they take into consideration what the school boards told them, those groupings, which is direction from the legislature, grand list values, and then the following criteria. ADM of the aggregate ADM of all of the school districts in the study committee has to be a minimum of 1,500 students as practical. The House had 2,000. You are now at 1,500.
Senator Hinsdale, that was you wanted to drop it down to 1,500, if I remember correctly, right?
It was a thought because that is the mean school district size in the country. And mean to me says we have a lot of rural school districts that are brought way up by the urban school districts, but most school districts in the country are an average size of 15.
Again, if they're doing it, I don't know if we need to put a number there. If they can show they're being efficient at 500 students, like Cannon, we know Cannon's not going to be, well, they're not, they'll probably be by themselves regardless.
This is just for the study committee membership. It's not for the end result. Right? So Canaan is by definition going to be with other school districts.
Yep.
Right?
So this is what the facilitator pulls together.
This is just about the group.
And
Yes.
then
And as practical, they can work, they could bring back and say, hey, this makes more practicality than 15. Okay, go, yeah, good, go.
And then line 12, page 32, school districts on the same study committee may be members of different supervisory unions. So the timeline, Senator Williams, is actually on page 31, line 20. What we just walked over walked through for
Okay.
forming the the study committees needs to happen on or before December 1st, 2026.
Okay, thank you.
And then their first meeting on line 14, page 32, also has to happen on or before December 1st, 2026.
Okay,
So the timeline's kind of embedded throughout, and I'll do my best to call out those dates.
so who's gonna, I'm sure there's gonna be some questions about this. Who's gonna be the go-to entity? Is it gonna be AOE that's gonna
So
drive this?
So luckily, current law already spells out who staffs study committees and who, how they get their help. So Chapter 11 and Title 16 tells us that the central offices of all of the different supervisory unions that are involved are providing support to the study committees, and it requires the Agency of Education to make their staff available for the study committee help. That's all in current law.
Thank you.
Yep. So I'm on page 32, line 15. Notwithstanding any provision of law to the contrary, a school district shall participate in the study committee it is assigned to by the facilitator. You can add language there that says the participation has to be in good faith. You know, you can do what you need to there, but folks have to come to the table under this language.
I'm good.
faith and cooperation.
Is there a way, for a district assigned to one of these to say it like that on line 15 of page 32? That we actually would rather be over in this?
Yes,
Yes.
we're almost there. Okay,
Sure, but
subdivision.
she said in good faith, to put that like assigned to, so what was the wording again?
I think you could say, notwithstanding any provision of law to the contrary, a school district shall participate in good faith in the study committee it is assigned to.
It's a,
Right, you can say that. Legislative, but we suggest it.
Okay, so I'm on page 32, line 18, subdivision 3. A study committee formed pursuant to this section shall adhere to the processes and requirements of Chapter 11. That is a fancy way of saying you got to follow current law for this process. And everything under subdivision 3, that's a letter, so A through F, I think we're at, are either augmentations of current law, clarifications of current law, or deviation of current law for the study committee process. So page 33, subdivision A, a study committee formed pursuant to this section shall only identify school districts with the same operating structure as necessary, and shall identify a school district with an operating structure that differs from the majority of study committee members as advisable, which means the necessary and advisable construct comes down to the electorate vote on whether or not to form a union school district.
And if it is deemed necessary, it says no, the district doesn't form. If it's advisory, and it says no, the district can still form.
Correct.
That's the, yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
I think I'm a little confused on this section, just lines 1 through 6. What is meant by the same operating structure? What does that mean?
It's not defined. My understanding is that operating structure is referring to whether you operate schools or tuition students. And within that, whether you operate schools for some grades and tuition some grades, or you operate all and tuition all.
So. So can you run it by me one more time, what this actually implies, what it would?
So if you had let's say 5 school districts on a study committee, 2 of them operate pre-K through 12. Or let's say 4 of them operate pre-K through 12. This is the simplest example. 4 of them operate pre-K through 12, and 1 of them operates pre-K through 6 and tuition 7 through 12. Those 5 school districts could say, hey, it would be awesome. We see efficiencies with the foundation formula coming. We're going to form a new union school district. They would only be able to identify the 4 operating school districts as necessary to the formation of the school district, which means that when it comes down to the voters voting on whether or not to approve formation of the school district, if the voters in all 5 of those towns or school districts say yes, great, the school district forms with all 5. But if the outlier, the pre-K through 6, 7 through 12 school district says no, then the school district still forms with those 4 operating school districts. If one of the operating school districts says no, but the 3 operating school districts and the pre-K through 6, 7 through 12 says yes, then the school district does not form because not all of the necessary school districts voted yes to form the new school district.
So kind of getting back to something that Senator Heffernan mentioned earlier regarding confusing aspects of this in general. I'm unclear on why we have this section and what purpose it serves. It seems really convoluted, and I'm not understood. Why do we have lines 1 through 10 on this page? Does anybody?
I think how much of this was in some necessary and advisory was in past construct?
So necessary and advisory, those terms were in the House version. I'd have to pull it up to see how they were used, but those are terms in current law, and that process I just described is the same as current law. So if you are identified as necessary, the new school district cannot form without you approving it. And if you are just identified as advisable, then the school district can form without you. Lines 1 through 6 came from the Senate, and lines 7 through 10 came from the House.
So it's conceivable that a district, even if it had all operating K through 12, could identify one of the districts as advisable versus necessary. They can decide which ones are.
Under current law, it is up to the whim of the study committee to decide who is necessary and advisable. And my understanding of the way that practically plays out is literally the plain meaning of those words. Who's necessary to the formation of the school district to meet the policies and goals of the state, and who would it just be a bonus to have along with you? The line 7 through 10 is the language to answer Senator Bongart's question about how you can move from groupings. Is what gives the facilitator the ability. So if a study committee identifies a school district as necessary that is not a member of the study committee, they would work with the facilitator to update their study committee membership. Do you want to move on to B? Or do we want to stay
Really-
on A?
Well, I didn't really care if we call it a CISA. I just want them to work together because it could take over that one SU that could say, okay, we're gonna just like what we heard yesterday. Don't need to form a SU if you have, a CISA, if you can say, hey, start looking toward this SU or, district to start combining what we're gonna ask them to combine. Or it's an option. Study committee that to become a CISA or not.
I think what this is doing, if I understand it, is simply say that that the districts can be looking to merge across CISA lines. There's nothing to prevent that.
Well, we're calling, yeah,
Whatever.
semantics, I guess, but yeah. I'd choose to change that to region rather than CISA, because I don't want to push a CISA if we don't need it.
Well, I understand. But for now, let us know that.
Yes, I, for the sake of working on these study committee process, it sounds like you all are comfortable acknowledging that the term CISA exists in here because we're borrowing from the House language, but we in this conversation are talking about the region. Do we want to stay on subdivision A or move on?
I'll probably have questions later on, but I'm fine with this.
Okay.
So Beth, this has got to go back to the House after we amend it, right?
Yes.
Okay,
B. So I'm on page 33, line 11. This is about study committee budgets. So again, current law has a whole statute for how a study committee gets the money it needs to do its work. And what subdivision B says is, we're gonna, notwithstanding that process in current law, we, the legislature, are gonna give you some money to get you started. We're gonna do that by giving you a facilitator, and we're gonna do that later on by giving you 10 grand. Starting on line 14, if the study committee identifies they need more money than the facilitator or the 10 grand, they would just revert to current law on how they get that money. And that means that costs are allocated according to school districts' ADM. Subdivision C?
Yes.
yes,
Okay. So in addition to what's in current law that the study committee is required to be studying, a study committee shall also explore the advisability and feasibility of a contemplated new school district operating a regional, middle, or high school, or both. A regional, middle, or high school contemplated pursuant to this section shall offer resident students increased educational opportunities and access to CTE. Subdivision D. Subdivision D is,
So I just think we need to consider on this. This is getting to your. Okay. So C is an important consideration within this. Make sure we agree. Okay. Yes. So D.
okay, so now I'm on page 34, line 4.
thank you.
So subdivision D is all about what needs to be in the report of a study committee if the study committee's decision or recommendation is to form a new unified union school district. There's a whole separate subdivision for the reporting requirements if they decide not to form a new unified union school district. So subdivision D, line 4, page 34. If a study committee formed pursuant to this section determines that it is advisable to propose formation of a new UUSD, in addition to the requirements, the reporting requirements in current law, the final report also needs to include an analysis of the following: the educational advantages and disadvantages likely to result from the formation of the proposed UUSD, the financial advantages and disadvantages likely to result from the formation of the proposed UUSD.
Chair, can I stop you there for a second and ask, could we put in the education advantage is likely to result from formation of the purpose of the unified school? or how they can show that not combining with this is a good idea.
I think, does that come into that, comes in the next?
Yep, this is,
Fair enough.
that's for subdivision E.
Okay,
Yep. And what you just said, Senator Heffernan, may not be spelled out there, so hang on to that thought.
okay.
Can I ask one more question? You says a new supervisory unit, if it's already an SU and it's gonna change, then it becomes a new SU, correct? Any
We're
change?
we're not talking about supervisory unions at all. We're only talking about school districts.
Okay,
And we're gonna ask the agency to give you all a report in a couple years. After all this work has been done, that recommends whether or not you need to change supervisory union boundaries as a result of this work.
okay.
Okay, so I'm on page 34, line 10. The financial, so this is again, what needs to be in the report. If the study committee says, yes, we're gonna form a new unified union school district. The financial advantages and disadvantages likely to result from the new unified union school district. The likely operational and financial viability and sustainability of the proposed new unified union school district. And any other advantages or disadvantages, including any advantages or disadvantages to the students and taxpayers of the region and the state for the formation of that new proposed unified union school district.
Kind of covers it.
Okay, so now we're moving, or can we move to subdivision E? Are we good with subdivision D? Okay. So subdivision E is the study committee got together and they said, we're not going to form a new unified union school district. Here's what needs to be in their report. The study committee has to prepare a report with the following details. I'm on page 35, line 3. The names of the school districts, and I should say, let me back up just a second to subdivision D. If the study committee votes to propose formation of a new unified union school district, in addition to this report, they also, under current law, and because it's listed in current law, I haven't spelled it out here, they also have to come up with draft articles of agreement. And those draft articles of agreement are going to have lots more information in them.
Sure. Yes, when, I'm almost going back to the, supervision, where was it where they said they weren't gonna become, is there anything we could put in there that would say that they're going to be able to use the foundation formula as proposed, that they're gonna be able to work under that amount?
That is a policy, you could absolutely add that. But whether what you were requesting back from them is doable, I cannot comment on, but that.
Right, and now let's get that from the field, but that's not our, that's
The financial advantage of this.
of using the foundation formula. I want that they understand that we're gonna push them to the foundation formula, and if they just,
Well, I think they know that, I think they know, so I think that language should settle, it's just the financial advantages and disadvantages will be really of operating under the foundation.
right,
And this structure under the foundation.
But I fully respect what the legal counsel's done here. And I'm not sure whether the genesis of all the language, but D and E, whether the study committee is going to meet regardless. Study committee is going to have results. I don't see why there's one paragraph, which is if it's a positive report, the next paragraph is it's a negative report. In fact, we should just task them to provide a report, advantages, disadvantages, et cetera, and I'll give you a classic example on page 35, paragraph, line 12. If the decision is not unanimous, should apply to both scenarios, as an example. So all the criteria we're asking in D, and then separately and with different words in E, we should just be asking them, give us your analysis, positive, negative, and then your final recommendation, or your final request, or however. It's a little wonky having everything in one paragraph and then a separate paragraph.
If I could respond briefly, I I hear where you're coming from, but I think if if you let it be that open-ended, what's to stop folks from providing a report that says we don't have any further recommendations one way or the other?
Status quo. But at least they've done the analysis and you'll see the analysis. And again, there to that point, say there's a 5-member committee and 4 of them go one way, one of them votes the other. We should also know what that one individual who didn't support the concept. Things that apply on D should apply to E. It's all what we need to see from that report. It's identical, whether they vote in favor or they reject. That's just basic premise. That's all I'm saying. And that paragraph about not being unanimous is a classic example. If they support if the study committee supports the concept, but it's not unanimous, we should know that, and we should know what the dissenting decision is. That's all. That's all.
Okay, we want to try to combine these so that it says the study committee issues the report clearly stating yes or no, and then roughly try. Was there a rationale for separating these? Should we both now?
Current law requires a report if a study committee determines it is advisable to form a new unified union school district. It does not require a report if the study committee determines it's inadvisable. And so
Probably should.
So this
was just a spin-off of maybe we should get a report from the folks who said it's not advisable, and what do we want in that report?
Right.
Is a policy choice you could make to ask for the same types of analyses in out of both options.
that's what you're suggesting.
It is what I'm saying.
Okay, so
I'm in favor of that.
So for tomorrow, I will come back to you with an amalgamation of these two in one section so that it's the same requirement for.
I know you kind of looked at me with section page 33, 34, etc. I don't know if whatever gets more people to yes. I mean, I think, like, I'm just speaking for myself, I think it would be ideal if we tried to have a solid vote out of our committee. I think I'll say this, the foundation formula is a cost containment tool. The question of consolidation is what vision are we trying to enact? And if we 6 are not clear about what vision we're trying to enact, because I'll say again, I don't think people want the vision of closing elementary schools. I think generally they want the vision of regionally excellent, amenity-rich facilities at the late, middle, and all of high school level. I would require people stay at the table and come up with something if that would set a vision that we think a majority of Vermonters are asking us for.
so I'm suggesting we do that in the intent section.
I'm suggesting that anybody could just walk away from this study and then somebody's writing a report. Unless you wanted to point me to something that says, like, you have to stay at the table, this is a very disconnected process from creating buy-in around a vision for consolidation.
You have to stay. I mean, we got to tell them they have to do something. Because if you don't stay, you're not a part of the process, you're not going to get the funding.
I think part of the thinking I'm objecting to asking has been that if you were not to stay and not to be a part of this process, you send a signal that you want somebody else to do it for you. like the legislature. So I think there's every incentive.
Say that again?
I think there's every incentive for districts.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're bad at it, Jill, but like you're not requiring. We have districts who have gotten well past this point and to a vote in their community, and that has been voted down. And they even believe that they should look at different facilities.
I guess you might have been out of the room, could be, because the reason we came back to this is like, we want it from the bottom up, that's what we've been hearing. We don't want to be
Yes.
controlled. So it's like, you have this year to decide. And if their committee comes back and says, hey, these two should join, and then the voters say, we don't want it, well, as our legislative council, it becomes a chartered school or charter.
Oh, nothing happens.
But if the legislative said it's gonna happen.
And if the legislature creates a school district, that is essentially you all chartering a school district.
That's what's gonna happen if you don't work on this together. Because that's what we've been hearing. Don't mingle in with us. It's like, okay, we're not gonna, but now you have to do the study. And whatever the study comes back and says that, yeah, these two, well, I can use Virgins and Mount Aid. They did 18-month study. They found it was gonna be a great idea. Voters said no. So if that happens,
Yeah.
then it's like, well,
Montpelier.
right, Montpelier, and we're going by just what you asked for, data.
Yeah, well, but I guess, and not but, and. Generally, we want bottom up, but what vision do we want to set for that bottom?
Foundation formula, that's what you gotta work with.
The foundation formula is a cost containment tool. The student experience is the question of why consolidation.
We want student excellence with efficiency.
I also, I think I know where you're going, which is not, it's no, it's not, nothing's exclusive here.
They're gonna do whatever.
You're going back to the language that we had in the bill we voted out of the education committee last year.
Yes,
Which talked about local elementary schools, more
community.
more centralized
Central
middle schools and regional high schools.
Yes,
And you would like that to be part of the vision that these study groups have in mind as their function.
I think what we heard
We did,
is that
paragraph C.
So it's kind of,
I
yeah,
mean, it's
many communities are reluctant to come to the table if they think it means their elementary
so
school.
let's say that, let's say it's almost.
They are more
let's-
likely to come to the table if they know we have to partner with somebody where we're talking about regionalizing our high school.
So I think that
If
language,
that's what we want.
that language, that is sort of a,
Page 33, subdivision C, line 18. I think you can do a couple things depending on your ultimate goals. So right now, this subdivision just requires study committees to explore the advisability of operating a regional middle or high school. You can change that language to say operating, I believe it was local elementary schools, central middle schools, and regional high schools. And then you could ask for some information on how they would be meeting that or what their analysis showed in the final report.
Or what you could do is say they need to be working towards a proposal that's voted on. I mean, I guess the question is, what does the report do when we get it? We could say, the question is, do we want to vote on this thing? If we want a vote,
focus.
if we want the voters to weigh in, then I think we need to be more explicit than a report.
I disagree with that because
Do we want the voters to vote? Because that's,
yes, the voters can vote down the line. Due process, yes. But the voters need to understand if it says no and the study says yes, that more than likely it's gonna happen. That's gotta be the hammer, if we will, or what have you, to say that this bill has some bite. Other than that, it's just, as Senator Weeks, it's just gonna be status quo and we're not getting anywhere. And I'm frustrated after being here 2 years of us not getting it.
So I think.
Yeah, we don't just-
Hang on here. I think what you're thinking about is having the merger discussions in with a vision.
Yes,
And why don't we, or let me just posit this, that at the beginning of section 13, we say something to the effect that the vision for this work is to head toward, have districts heading toward the notion of local elementary schools, more centralized middle schools and regional high schools.
mhm,
Why don't we make that the vision? Because to the extent that you're worried, and I think it's legitimate, that everybody's scared that this is gonna mean closing down elementary school when that really isn't what we're talking about, why not say it? Why not say that the vision is for mergers, the vision for mergers
mhm.
is to achieve.
And then, if I may, Senator Weeks, and then I give you the. I would make sure the language drives at that. Because there's a lot of mays, and then they should also do this, and I feel like I couldn't work with Beth, but I think there's a lot of off ramps. And a lot of fuzziness.
Well, let's.
May I interject? So we have a legislative intent on page 1. We have this vision buried on page 33, 34 of 149 pages. I do agree with Senator Ron Hinsdale that the vision ought to be articulated quite well and not buried, and I think it belongs up front. Otherwise, this effort is, it's not going to resonate and it's going to be misinterpreted.
So you're saying put the bottom line up front, put it all in the intent?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
I will add a sentence to the first section that indicates it's the legislature's intent to achieve something with local elementary schools, central middle schools, and regional high schools,
Statewide system.
statewide system.
Is that statewide system? Single district? But of examinations, maybe. Okay.
I'm good with that.
Okay, I can do that. I still hear, do you want to keep walking through, or do you want to try and settle?
I want to keep walking through. If we can kind of all keep our head in the game here, maybe we can move through this. So we
Okay.
don't have to cover old ground that we have already been over.
So is that what you'd like to do, Chair?
Well, I didn't hear the second half of what you're talking
I was just gonna say, it seems like there is, maybe walking through it will get us there, but it seems like there's still a difference in opinion in the committee as to whether the end result of this process is a vote by the electorate or a report back to the legislature and then legislative action.
I have not seen that as mutually exclusive. Voters are free to.
They are not. In fact, that's what the House version has, is the voters ultimately vote, and then you're getting report backs on how that's going. But I'm hearing some members of the committee say they don't want it to go to a vote.
I don't think there's any question as to.
You got me semi-right. It's like, we don't want to wait for the voters to come back. We want that report, and then if the voters vote no, and the report says yes, that the voters need to know, even though they voted no, it could happen.
Well, then let's
I
keep
agree.
walking through.
I agree.
But so, yeah, I don't think we want to prevent, we definitely don't want to prevent voters from.
Right.
So.
But if the study committee comes back and says this is a great thing and all the voters say no, what's happened in Mount Avon, Virgins? And I can give for instance, 1967, 68, when Bristol, Moncton, New Haven all had their own high schools and we went to Mount Avon. This same feelings in that were going around the town. By the time I got to high school, it was long gone. So might take 20 years, but everybody will eventually be
Okay, so we on.
We're on page 36, line 7, subdivision F. We're gonna skip over subdivision E because that's the reporting requirement for an inadvisable finding, and I'm just gonna combine D and E for tomorrow. So subsection F was added by the Senate, by you all, and it requires each study committee to consult with area CTE directors and document such consultation and any recommendations made by the CTE director in their final report.
Should we ask that rather than consultant, have them be part, and this is a question for the chair and committee, to be part of the whole process?
Well, the problem, the difficulty, the funny thing about that is that CTE directors are, in most instances,
Sorry,
part of either district or an SU, so they're not their own, they're a subdivision, so it's a little odd to have them.
Well, they're not necessarily a subdivision. I thought you were gonna say that they span multiple SUs and districts. But if they're fully located inside of one, I really think they should be at the table all the time. Unless they oppose that, but they have asked for that.
Well, there's, have the one thing that might make sense, we have the 4 that are independent. We could list those with within the grouping as one of the entities to look at merging, because we might want those independents to merge into so I think it might make sense to list those 4 within the zones that they're in as one of the participants.
Well, why not all of them? Why just the independent?
It's a little complicated because they're sometimes already part of.
I guess they're in each scenario, they have some different model, right? There's like 4 different models. I don't think there's a model where they're already at the table in this.
So I think there's
So I ultimately, it depends. Ultimately, I will do what you need me to do. The 4 separate standalone CTE school districts aside, and those are not municipalities, and the 2 independent schools aside, all of the other CTE centers, so the majority of CTE centers are operated by a school district that will have a seat at this table already. And so, if you want me to have them have a seat at the table, meaning they are a CTE director is a member of the study committee, I would want to think through the language we would need to build in about making it clear what their role on the study committee would be, because they would not, those 4 standalone districts aside, the study committee is looking at forming a new school district. It would almost be akin to having the principal of a regional high school having a seat at the table, while the school district that the principal is responsible to also has a seat at the table, right? I can see some potential conflicts there between employer, employee, if their interests diverge. This study committee process is very specific to union school district formation. If we're going to deviate from that, we can. We just need to be thoughtful about that. And it is 3:40 on May 6th. And so I don't know where that thoughtfulness is going to come from in the time that we have left.
But let's make sure we're clear about what we're trying to achieve, which is that they are consulted throughout the process. And that, and so they don't have a vote at the end, because, and I understand your point, I also think they have multiple people they answer to is the huge problem, right? They answer to many masters. So I would like to make sure that, and the other problem is there's probably multiple CTE directors that would fall into each of these different positions.
depending on the grouping. You may have no CTE directors, or you can have two CTE, or
So what I'm asking for is to work with Beth on the language so that as many CTE directors as touch that chunk are at the table and consulted for the whole process without being a voting member.
I think that language does this. I think the language on line 7 does this.
Okay.
Page 36, line 7. Every study committee is required to consult with their CTE directors, and they have to document the consultation and any recommendations in their final report. If that is not enough, then I think you could just say that they are non-voting, the CTE member is a CTE director is a non-voting member of a study committee. But then how do you determine, not every study committee is going to have a CTE director, but that CTE director is going to be responsible for the CTE education of several of the
Tell me why
groups, right?
I wouldn't have a CTE director there.
Do you want the CTE director to be a member of 8 study committees?
Potentially, yes. I mean, I don't know, that's what's concerning.
I don't know that that's physically
So
possible.
the CTE directors would like to come in and talk about this. They are putting some language in, they are moving H 313
H313 is in-house education, yes,
and it is advancing.
yes.
So you could correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think H 313 is gonna be able to take care of this governance process. But there is a lot of contemplation happening about CTEs being at the table because they are their own district.
Well,
Agreed.
they're their own district in 4 instances.
Okay,
In those 4 instances, the CTE districts are not municipalities. And they are, they don't have taxing capacity, and they have the same membership as the other school districts in the region, right? So if you had a CTE director from one of the standalone 4 CTE school districts, they would technically be representing the same municipalities as some of the other school districts on the study committee who are there representing the school district. And so I think it's all a policy decision, but I would draw the line at policy and legal when we get to voting.
So I go back to, as you pointed out, that F really doesn't. Should,
Stick a pin in it and come back to it.
yeah, that's a.
Can we require every school district to be associated with a E? CTE?
But I think we have consult with area, because area is gonna be bigger, because we're gonna need those directors to consult with more than one, a lot of times, as you suggest.
Potentially, I don't know. I haven't looked at the CTE regions and the,
The fact that it
Yeah.
also says shall document such consultation and recommendations made by a director is pretty extensive.
okay, I will just say I've asked for a map of the CTEs.
We have it.
Okay.
We have one, I don't know if Daphne has it with the CTEs on the, some map,
Really
showing where
appreciate
they
that.
are.
On the CISA map,
Yeah, put it on the CISA map.
this one, the big one,
Yeah,
okay,
but you could also then tell, you can
Sure,
tell.
I'll
us.
try.
Okay. Yeah. That shows where all the CTEs are, right? Yeah.
I will say this, if these groups are responsible for a report that moves us towards regional high schools, I think CTEs are integral.
Well, why don't we put that in the vision at the beginning as well?
You're asking a lot of division, but okay.
Why don't we add that language that we have somewhere else? We have a couple other places about, so we have local elementary or central middle school, regional high schools, and
It would be comprehensive regional high schools then. The comprehensive part is the CTE.
that means every high school. Will we move toward that?
Yes,
Uh, is it at comprehensive high schools and real access for every middle and high school student? That's what we're.
I would say universal, but real access.
Fair enough.
Real's a bit more subjective.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, okay, I meant, no, anyway, yeah, that's fine. We want that to be part of the vision, so I think that's right, we want every kid to have access to CPD.
Yes, whatever, even if it's intent language, which I'm,
Yep.
it's fine. I want to make sure that their study would not be complete without contemplating a comprehensive regional high school. Which is a student does not feel
So.
the experiential difference between taking their CTE classes and taking their academic classes.
Well, why don't we try to move that language that Beth is working on, also, we put it in front and then repeat it in C on page 33. That's one of the part of the goal for the merger discussions is, and just plug it back in, that we take right off the first page. Okay, then we're back to,
Page 36, line 12, subdivision 4. So you'll notice that we've moved out from under subdivision 3, which is the study committee process itself. And we're now back out into the rest of the process for union school district formation. So on page 36, line 12, study committees are required to complete their final report on or before December 1st, 27. And they have to transmit those reports to the boards of their participating school districts. And I can, now that we're doing one report, I'll clean this up a little bit to be more succinct. But subdivision 4 is that on or before December 1st, 27, final report's done and it goes to the participating school districts. That's the next step. On page 37, line 1, subdivision 5 is a requirement that all the school boards complete their review of that report on or before February 1st, 2028. And if they want to provide comments to the study committee, they can do so as provided in current law.
Chair, would you mind if that they send that report as well to the House and Senate Education on December 27th? So we see it at the same time as the school board, so we have an idea and a direction of where we may be heading.
so trying to think about how that fits into the vision report.
Interim report is on page 42. And it asks for a status on the study committee. And you had language in there asking for their final recommendations, but it was removed. You could add it back in.
Went down, put it back in, I think it makes sense there now that I realize. I thought the final reports would be ready by then. What line was that?
On page 42, section 14A, starting on line 11, asks for the lead facilitator to give you all kind of a summary of the status of each study committee. And that language previously on line 16 had a requirement that the interim report include the final recommendations of each study committee. And I can add that back in. Okay.
That should be done.
That's another whole year.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Do we want to?
No, it's January 1, 2028 versus December 1, 2027.
That's
It's a month.
That's too long. Thank
Yeah, that
you.
makes sense. Makes no sense. So
Your mind's
So
still.
it gets to what you're looking. Okay. So,
Thank you.
Okay. So we're on subdivision, so we're on page 37. The next step is that, it's not really a step, it's a directive to the facilitators on line 5, page 37. To monitor the work of the General Assembly and share the most up-to-date fiscal modeling with the study committees. So theoretically, you're going to get a report back from JFO's contractor in December of this year, right as the study committees get going. And next year, you may be doing work on the foundation formula that could impact the study committee's analysis. And so this is asking those facilitators to be monitoring the work that you all are doing and give any modeling that JFO is doing, make sure it's being shared with the study committees. Okay, so we're moving out. I'm on page 37, line 8, subsection C. I'm moving out of the local process and moving up to the state level. So if the study committee determines it's advised, so if the study committee has determined it's inadvisable to form a study committee, the version of language you have in front of you right now is that the process stops.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yep. If a study committee determines it is inadvisable to form a new school district, the language you have now means that the process stops for those study committees.
For that one district.
they said we're not interested.
Chair,
Correct.
and that's where they need to show then if they're not interested, how they're gonna survive on what the foundation formula would be. That
And I'm
would,
gonna build that into the reporting requirement that you're gonna see tomorrow.
all right, great.
So what we're about to walk through is only applicable to study committees that have determined it is advisable to form a new UUSD. The study committee is required to on page 37, line 10, transmit their report and their proposed articles of agreement to the Secretary of Education. The secretary is required to do a review of those and give recommendations with the proposal to the state board under current law. That's that reference on line 11 to section 709 subsection B. What this language does is put a time limit on how long the secretary has to do that. So if the secretary fails to submit the report and the proposed articles of agreement along with the secretary's recommendations to the state board within 60 days of receipt of that report, or on or before April 1st, 2028, whichever date occurs first, then the study committee doesn't have to wait for the secretary to complete the secretary's review. They can go directly to the state board and say, okay, here's our report and our proposed articles of agreement. Let's move on to the next stage in this process.
So I'm not worried about them creating districts as much as when they're getting together as well as that region, almost like a CISA that they're gonna work on how as a community in that region are gonna work to streamline what's going on in that region. So, you know, they don't have to create a CISA, but work together. Is that kind of intended in the language that we're giving them?
We are not talking, there's nothing to do with CC.
Right, but you understand what I'm
don't.
looking at of that when they get together,
Yeah,
that they're also not just talking about districts, but they're also going to be talking about how they can share resources and become more intercommunal, if you will, to make a more efficient system to start hopefully saving Vermonters money.
I think my understanding of the conversation we've had working within current law and the language that we have in front of us is that what you have just described would be the type of analysis that a study committee would give in their final report
Okay.
if they are determining it's not advisable to form a new union school district. because they can do those things and survive under the foundation formula.
All right.
Does that track what you're saying?
If you,
Build that language for the reporting requirement?
I was gonna say, correct me if I'm wrong, Senator Heffernan, are you recommending that these study committees also take into consideration the formation of a CISA?
no, not necessarily, because they may say, hey, this SU, as we heard the other day, they have a way of facilitating, more, like payroll or what have you, that they show it without having to create a CISA, that we've met with each other. We've all decided that this district can support so many other factors in surrounding districts, and we're going to use that rather than calling it a CISA. If they want to call it a CISA, I'd be happy if they wanted to do that as well. But they need to show that how they're going to become more efficient to help save money for the state. If you stay status quo, things are going to stay just the way they are, and we can't have that. And that's what I want out of these study committees, that, we don't want status quo, because if you all came back and said, everything's great, our tax rate doesn't show it. Everything is not. So you asked us not to meddle in it, and we have been and getting nowhere. We need answers from, and the only reason I say regions is because that way we're not really drawing lines other than saying you're in your region, and then we give them the out that, oh, I'm better off in this region, move me over there, and they can't. That's what I'm aiming
You
for.
could set up that process.
Yes, you just need to talk to your facilitator. I keep coming back to, I think what you're asking for is that if this grouping of school districts decides they don't want to form a new school district, that in their final report, they need to be able to show that they have a plan for how to work together to be efficient under the foundation formula, right?
And if it's a CISA, I guess we have it spelled out there, but
Let's finish that one first.
There are several avenues under current law that are already available to folks, including the voluntary formation of a BOCES, assuming you don't go forward with the mandatory CISA. There's joint contract schools that are allowable. There's joint contracts between supervisory unions. I mean, there's lots of mechanisms under current law. And so you could just say simply, in your report back to us, when you are just trying to sell us on how we will cooperate together to provide efficiencies and excellent education under the foundation formula, under the options available under current law, and then just leave it there.
because of that language, because they all understand scaling and everything that we're trying to achieve. And the only thing we haven't done is saying, you're going to do the study, and then you're either going to prove us that you can give us the efficiencies without changing, or you do your studies and say, oh, this will help if we make new districts doing this.
Well, I think your point about having really do the financial analysis under the financial formula is going to help inform them whether that's sensitive or not. So,
Yeah, that's the only way I'm going to be sold on this.
all right, I think
Okay, so we're in subsection, and you had me for another hour. If we could take like a brief break so I could get some water, that would be great.
Why don't we take